Hey guys, Riz here again. I've had a couple of comments about what are the minimum required specs for the Vive to run successfully at the 90 frames a second it requires, and also a request from a real life mate who said, why don't I make a video about it? So here we are. So straight off the bat, the Vive website has the minimum required specs or recommended specs, either one, listed as an Intel i5 4590 or an FX 8350, 4 gig of RAM, GTX 1060 or an RX 480, hard drive space for Steam VR, and of course any VR games or apps that you would be installing. And I would highly suggest putting those on an SSD, not just a mechanical drive. And in addition to that, you will also have to have your graphics card supporting either HDMI 1.4 or DisplayPort 1.2. And there's a little bug I encountered later on that I'll talk about with that. You'll also need a USB 2.0 port, and of course, Windows. And the minimum one is 7 with Service Pack 1 or greater. And on the Vive website as well, you can actually buy complete, like, pre-built computers, kind of like a Dell or a HP or something like that, which are VR ready. So if you can't be bothered building one or getting a local PC shop to build one for you, there's an option there. Another option is, of course, to, depending on your budget, look at the specs of the machines that they're selling pre-built, and then if you can get a better deal online for those components and build it yourself, or take that to your local PC shop and get them to build a similarly spec'd rig for you. So when I started with the Vive, I was running an i7 950, which wasn't overclocked, and also a GTX 970. Now, those run pretty well, but the CPU, the i7 950, was bottlenecking it a little bit. So I've upgraded that to a 6700K, which at the moment I haven't overclocked either, and also a GTX 1080 and 16 gig of RAM. But prior to that, I was only on 8 gig of RAM, which I had been for 5 years or something. Now, the 950 and the 970 ran most Vive games pretty well. I encountered issues when there was lots of physics stuff going on, or if I was trying to record something. I'm using OBS to record. So if I was doing something like this for YouTube, a YouTube video, or if I was streaming on Twitch, I encountered issues there when I was recording and playing stuff at the same time. If you're not doing that, you probably wouldn't have any issues. What else was there? I'm just reading my notes, and yeah, I read online that some people have been using anything from 770s, 780s, and had no issues as long as it was paired with a decent CPU. The graphics side of it seems to be powerful enough if you have that to run the games well enough. But probably the best way to test if your PC is ready to run Steam VR and most of the apps and games that you're going to use is to use the Steam VR performance tool, which Steam will let you install for free. So you can download that directly through Steam. I put a link in the description below. It'll show up under the tools section, I believe, once it's installed. And if you run that, it will basically go through you call it a tech demo. One of the experiences you get with the Vive, which is the lab, it was made by Valve, has a bunch of mini games and stuff in it. It runs through one of the mini games of that and tests your frame rate and your CPU and stuff like that, and then gives you a recommendation at the completion of the test. So another thing that Steam VR offers you, if your machine isn't powerful enough or just drops frames or anything like that, or loses tracking occasionally, is the reprojection options. I'm going to have to read from my notes for this. I did a little bit of research trying to find out exactly what each one does, and I think even one or two of them might be built in automatically now. So there was 3 options, or there is 3 options, I should say, but one of them I don't think you can access. Actually, no, maybe it's 2. I don't think you can access interleave reprojection or asynchronous reprojection without using the OpenVR settings. If there's another way to do it, let me know. The only thing I could find in the Steam VR settings themselves was always on reprojection. But what they are is basically ways to pick up the slack if your GPU or your CPU starts chugging a little bit and you lose tracking or your frame rate drops, which can lead to a bad experience. You can get motion sick or it'll mess with the physics in a game, stuff like that. So, excuse me. Interleave reprojection, which I think was what was first, from what I've read, if your frame rate dropped below 90, it would kick in, drop your frame rate to half of that, so 45 frames a second, and it would reproject every other frame, so it would make it still feel like 90 frames a second. But the issue was there, it would impact on the tracking of the headset and the controllers themselves. So you had a smoother frame rate, but the tracking wasn't as good. Then you have asynchronous reprojection, which, unlike interleave, didn't halve the frame rate, but what it would do, it would display the previous frame again, but it would shift it slightly to match the updated tracking data. It was better suited, or is better suited, I think, from when your frame rate would dip a little bit below 90, not a huge amount, so it was kind of a bit of a functional band-aid, I guess, there. Picking up the slack, again, where your GPU or CPU would let you down. And now there's always on reprojection, which is an option in the Steam VR settings themselves. So I think it's if you click on the little down arrow on the Steam VR window, then you go into settings, and then it's under developer or performance, something like that. That would let the app or game choose how to distribute or balance its CPU and GPU loads. So if you were moving the controller or the headset around and then a tracking delay kicked in, it would, always on would kick in and it would move the frame it had rendered slightly towards whichever way the tracking was going on. So your tracking would appear better, smoother, and it would kind of just go the direction that you were going to look or the controller was going to move. Picking up the slack again, trying to help out. And I've put in a couple of links down the bottom. One's a big-ass Reddit thread, which goes into a hell of a lot more detail than I just did about all of them if you're interested in exactly what they do, which is kind of where I got most of this information from. So that might be of use for anyone who's got a Vive or is going to get one and they're just a little bit worried that they might not have the specs needed to run it perfectly. And the last thing I wanted to talk about was not directly related to performance, but an issue I've encountered and a heap of other people encountered. Error 108 and a red light on the side of the Vive right here. See right now, there's a little green LED there. That there turns red. And you get a error message pop up saying 108 can't find headset, something similar to that. I found it when I first got my Vive that if I was shifting my PC somewhere, I shifted it to a different room so I had more room to play with and shifted it back into here. And of course you're unplugging stuff. When I was switching the USB ports or even plugging them back into the same USB port, HDMI port, it would all of a sudden say I couldn't find a headset. Now, I solved this issue finally after about a week of mucking around by using a HDMI to DisplayPort adapter, plugging the breakout box HDMI cable from the breakout box to the PC into the DisplayPort adapter, and then using the DisplayPort adapter into my graphics card instead of the HDMI cable. And that's seemed to have solved the problem for me. And so hopefully that's of some help to someone if they have that problem. And other people have had the issue, and I'm just reading here, they had solved it by only running power through the Vive's breakout box to the headset and plugging the HDMI cable and the USB cable directly into their computer, bypassing the HDMI, bypassing the link box, breakout box. And that helped them fix it. So if anyone has that issue, I hope that helps you. So with that in mind, I hope this short video has been of use to someone out there, and catch you soon. Peace.